Live. So we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. We really appreciate all you guys tuning in at home on YouTube today as we continue to highlight amazing scientists, explorers, and facilities. Oh, sorry, that's my fault. There we go. So we've been doing sessions with Ripley's Aquarium of Canada in the heart of downtown Toronto for the last few weeks now. Even though they're closed to the public, animal care continues, and they're doing fantastic work there in bringing all their amazing animals to you. So we have done some epic sharks, some endangered sea turtles. Today we are going full scale cuteness. We are going to go join Tally, who's an educator at the aquarium, for a seahorse feed. So without further ado, thank you so much for tuning in today, Tally, and take us away.
Perfect. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so my name's Tally. I'm one of the educators here at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. And today I'm standing in our gallery, which is home to some of my favorite animals like our piranhas, our cuttlefish, and of course, our seahorses. I'm also here with Emma. She's a little hard to tell in the dark, but she's one of our aquarium biologists, and she actually takes care of our seahorses. So she's going to be taking us through a little feed today. Now, we actually have two exhibits of seahorses. So we have that small one with our babies, and we have this big one here with some adults. The adults are a bit better at camouflage, so I'll see if we can get any up here as the feed commences, but they look like they're all hiding right now. And with seahorses, they have something in common. They have very simple digestive systems. They lack true stomachs, so they need to have constant access to food in order to get the nutritional content that they need. So for that reason, Emma will actually feed them upwards of 6 times every single day. We usually give them a mixture of myces, live myces, which is like almost like a really small shrimp, and brine shrimp. So you can see the little shrimp in there moving around. And in a couple of seconds, the seahorses will become aware that those are there. They don't have any teeth, and so they'll actually suck up their food whole, and they'll use their snouts to suck up their food almost like a little straw. So our seahorses are lined seahorses. They can be found in the Atlantic, all the way from Nova Scotia, all the way down to Venezuela. And they'll usually live about 4 years in the wild. Our juveniles are about 5 months old. They were born in November. And our adults over here, they've just gotten their food as well. They're about 2 years old now. They were also born here at the aquarium. So adults, they can usually reach about 17 centimeters. I think the biggest was about 19 centimeters. Our babies, they're much smaller than that right now. They're about the size of my pinky. And so they still have quite a lot of feeding and growing to go. Some of our juveniles are actually significantly larger than the other ones, and that's just because they've been better at competing for food. So Emma has actually taken out some of the larger ones and put them in the back in a holding exhibit to kind of reduce competition within this tank, to make sure that some of these smaller guys can really get big and strong. So it should be a few more months before we're able to put these ones within this exhibit. Now, a bit about seahorses. You guys probably know that the males are the ones in order to give birth. So what happens with that is the males actually produce something called a brood pouch. It's almost kind of like a kangaroo's pouch. And what they do is they form these monogamous pairs. So they'll find one singular seahorse that they want to mate with for life, and they'll perform little dances with each other every single morning. So what they'll do is they'll link up, they'll link with tails, and they'll actually dance around each other and make little clicking noises. So the female will then deposit her eggs within that brood pouch, up to 650 of them. And they're very, very small, about 2 millimeters. And they'll be in that little pouch for about 3 weeks before they're big enough to be born. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you guys look up a video of seahorse eggs being born. It is very, very amusing to watch. See if we can get a little look at these guys. So as you can see, they're all pretty much hiding inside this little vegetation with the decor. They are extremely poor swimmers. So they have very large bodies compared to their fins. You can't really see their dorsal fins very well because they actually beat so fast back and forth that they're almost invisible to the naked eye. So they can easily exhaust themselves if they have to swim within a current. So usually they'll use their prehensile tail in order to stabilize themselves against any rocks, vegetation, mangroves, and stuff like that in the wild. So by prehensile, I mean that they have the ability to grasp with it, pretty similar to our fingers and our thumbs. Can see some of them actually just coming up right there. They're very, very cute. They're sucking that up. Now, some of our juveniles have actually started forming those monogamous pairs. They've been actually doing those little dances every single morning. They're only 5 months, but they are starting to get to that age where they might be able to reproduce quite soon. So hopefully within the next year, we're gonna have some more little babies. You can see these two right here. They're actually linked up, as you guys can see. Now, seahorses have some really cool adaptations to help them in the wild because they are such poor swimmers and they are quite small. For example, their bodies are scaleless, unlike other fish. They're actually covered in bony plates. So these act almost like body armor, and they're uniquely shaped to every single seahorse. Also, that little crown, if you guys can look, that's on the top of a seahorse's head, that's made by one of those bony plates. It's unique to their species. And that little crown is called a coronet, and it actually makes clicking noises. And they'll usually make those clicking noises with their mate. So that's pretty cool. They'll do that with that dance every single morning. Unfortunately, I never seem to catch them while they're doing this dance, but Emma and a couple of the aquarists have told me about it. You can see a few more of them just linked up right there. Now, unfortunately, with our seahorses, they are listed as vulnerable. So what that means is there is a corporation, or an organization, sorry, that basically will rate species based on their population numbers in order to determine how best to protect them. So vulnerable means that they are at risk of being extinct within the near future. For the most part, the biggest threat to them is the fact that they have babies up to 650 at a time, but only 2 of those are going to survive till adulthood. So it's pretty similar to sea turtles. They have a lot of things against them as they are babies. Their parents don't take care of them once the males give birth. They're easily preyed upon. They're poor swimmers, and they're easily caught within nets as we're fishing because they have such big problems with swimming away. So some of the things that we can do to help protect our seahorses is to really make that switch to sustainable seafood. I know you might have heard it before, but we really try to push this. If you eat seafood, take the 2 seconds to read the label a couple seconds or a bit more closely. So look for something like checked by MSC or Oceanwise. Buying sustainable seafood essentially means that we're supporting species that can sustain themselves in the wild, that we're not depleting those populations quicker than other ones, that they can regrow in the wild, that they're not harming other species, that we're using sustainable fishing methods that aren't catching a lot of other species by accident. You can see quite a few of them linked up here as they try and get their food. Before we open it up to Q&A, I also wanted to highlight a couple other species within this gallery. We have our pipefish. They're very closely related to seahorses. They're all part of the same group of animals called sygnathids. If you look super closely within this group of vegetation, there's some little straight up and down fish right at the top there. These are pipefish. We have 3 different species in here: the gulf, the dusky, and the scribbled. Very similar. The males also are the ones to give birth. They have bony plates, lack of a stomach. They need to get fed 4 to 6 times every single day. And it looks like someone's actually doing a little bit of a decor rearrangement in this tank at the exact same time. And another one of their relatives, one of my favorite animals in the aquarium, is our weedy sea dragons. So There are 3 species of sea dragons. Here's one right here. And they look essentially like seahorses, but they have these little weedy appendages coming off of them. And these are meant to really help with essentially camouflaging them. Now, these guys are mostly from Australia, and they're very well protected in Australia. They're a very valuable animal there. They're on a lot of their flags. And so we actually got ours from Ripley's Aquarium in Myrtle Beach because they're one of the few aquariums that was actually able to breed them in captivity. So we're really lucky for that because it is otherwise impossible to get them in aquariums. They are very well protected, and we want to keep their populations stable in the wild. Now, if you guys have any questions about any of our seahorses, now would be a great time for those.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tally, for such a cool tour and some beautiful images of these awesome seahorses. For everyone tuning in on YouTube, you guys have been great in letting me know where you're joining from and typing in some questions. So keep that coming. In the next 20 minutes, we'll share as many as we can. So Camden wants to know, once they mate, if their mate passes away, do they find another or not? Do we know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So they can. It depends on the seahorse. There's kind of a period in time where it almost seems like they mourn. They might stop feeding for some species, but for the most part, monogamous pairs in seahorses means that they're going to keep with that same pair for either a breeding season or for life. So some of them will have multiple partners throughout life if one of them does pass away.
There you go. Thank you so much. All right. The Young family joining us for the 93rd time in the last 2 weeks. They want to know, how do they communicate?
How do they communicate? So they'll use that coronet that I mentioned, so that little horn there. You can kind of see it on this guy right here. So it's unique to each seahorse, and as they move their head, it's actually not connected to their skull, so it makes little clicking noises. So they'll use that to communicate with their mates.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right. Maymuna also joining us again for the 10th or so time. Do seahorses ever get sick? And if you want to segue this, Tally, into an understanding of what happens with vet care at the aquarium in general, go for it.
Yeah, so for sure, they definitely have the potential to get sick. Cygnathids, so it's the group of animals with our seahorses, our pipefish, and our sea dragons. They're all very sensitive animals to things like temperature and pH and salinity. So our aquarist, especially for Emma, for this tank, she has to monitor these things every single day to make sure that the conditions are favorable for these animals. If one of them was to get sick, she would take them out and put them in a separate holding exhibit, and we would have our vet give them a little look over to see what medications or what procedures need to be done.
Fantastic. I want to do a shout out to Fairgrounds Middle School. A lot of kids are joining in from there, and you guys are asking some great questions on YouTube, so we'll take as many as we can over the next few minutes. But first, though, Ryan in California wants to know, how do seahorses defend themselves?
So for the most part, their defense is mostly camouflage. So these guys, as you can see, their coloration is quite pale, but depending on what they eat or where they are in the wild, they can actually camouflage in with their surroundings. So because they're such weak swimmers, usually what they'll do is they'll actually just hide themselves in with this little vegetation and they'll blend in. So it's actually really hard for predators to find them. They have those bony plates surrounding them, acting like that body armor to help protect them as well. But for the most part, they don't have anything that they can actually use as offense. They don't have any sharp teeth or anything like that.
Right. I think it's in the Blue Planet 2 series from the BBC. There's a filming segment of it of 2 little pink seahorses having a fight where they're headbutting one another. And I'll try and find that and put it in the YouTube chat bar, but it's amazing. All right, we've got Brooklyn in Milton wants to know how seahorses move. So you showed us, you told us about these little fins at the back. I don't know if it would work to zoom in and see if we could see them, but it would be really cool if we could try and get a glimpse of them in action.
So a lot of them are just holding on. So they're not swimming too well, but you can kind of see with this guy on the back. So kind of where that hump is on his back, he actually has something called a dorsal fin. So it's pretty similar to a fin that you would see on top of a fish. And the reason that you can't see it right now is because while they're swimming, it actually will go back and forth about 30 times every single second. And so it's basically invisible for us. And then they also have the 2 pectoral fins there that act almost like little arms. But for the most part, these are very weak because they're quite small compared to the size of their body. So with swimming, They say that it would take a seahorse. There, you can see this guy here. It would take a seahorse probably about 5 minutes to cross a bathtub. And then with a pygmy seahorse, which is the smallest type of seahorse, it would take them about an hour just to move 5 feet.
Fantastic. I like that we're measuring this in bathtubs. For anyone online, if you guys want to check out seahorses, you can really see those fins really clearly in pictures online. Might be a little bit tricky with the video, but I encourage you to do that because they're very cool. All right, I know you showed us this a little bit earlier too, Tally, but a lot of people are asking again what they eat. So if they came in halfway through the broadcast, could you explain what they're eating in there?
Yeah, so if I zoom in, it's probably quite blurry, but these little things that are moving around are actually alive. These are a mixture of myces, which is crustaceans, really small, looks kind of like a little bit of shrimp, and live brine shrimp, which if you ever had sea monkeys as a kid, it's essentially the same thing. And brine shrimp is something that we actually grow and harvest here at the aquarium. So they'll get a mixture of those, depending on their age, several times a day. So with babies, newborn babies, they can be fed upwards of like 6 times every single day, I think. And I think Emma feeds ours about 3 times every single day. Babies.
Very cool. As you've been watching this feeding, I just want to stress, if you guys go back to just before our last answer, you'll see a seahorse actually take one of the mice shrimp and eat it. So it was very cool. All right, we've got from Satara, how long have seahorses been around on this planet?
How long have seahorses been around on this planet? I'm actually not entirely sure of that question. Emma, do you? No, we're not entirely positive. You guys would have to look that one up.
I'll try and Google that one and get it in the chat bar too. Awesome. All right, Alex wants to know how many species of seahorses there are in the world.
So I think there's about 30 different species of seahorses in the world. They're all saltwater. With our pipefish that we showed you in the other tank, there's actually some freshwater species of those ones, but for the most part, seahorses are all saltwater.
Very cool. Thanks, Tally. All right, the Young family wants to know, what's your favorite part of your job, Tally?
My favorite part of the job is I really love doing these live sessions and getting a close-up look at all of these animals feeding. It's very enjoyable for me, even though I've been here for a while and seen it many times. But also getting the chance to talk to people who haven't had a chance to see these animals in their life, and encouraging people to go out and learn more about them so that we can help them in the future.
Very cool. All right. We've been getting questions in all our sessions with Ripley's Aquarium about where you guys get your animals from. And I know you touched upon this, but if you could highlight your breeding programs there, if there are any, and how you get seahorses and how they get to other aquariums around the world, that would be fantastic. Tally, did you catch that, or was I on mute the whole time?
Sorry, I was so occupied with this little baby right here.
That's okay. It's just too cute. We derailed the whole session. It's so adorable. We can't even help. I was curious for people at home about how you guys get seahorses at the aquarium, if you breed them, how you get them to other aquariums, just to touch upon that again.
So we actually do breed seahorses here at the aquarium. So we've had several generations. We'll usually get a couple, I don't know if it would be called a litter or a brood for seahorses, but we get several batches of eggs every single year. It's pretty hard for us to tell when that's going to happen. I know these ones were born in November, and the adults that are over here that love to hide and never like to come out for videos, they were born about 2 years ago. Now, with our sea dragons, I mentioned that these guys are really hard to breed in captivity. They're very particular about the conditions that they enjoy and the triggers that they need in order to reproduce. But thankfully, we are AZA accredited, which means that we are part of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So we can actually trade and receive animals from other aquariums to kind of help create a sustainable population that doesn't require us catching anything from the wild. So we received those two from the Ripley's Aquarium in Myrtle Beach. And these guys were all born here.
Okay, very neat. By the way, to the question of how long seahorses have been around, it's somewhere between 3 and 13 million years old. So they're not actually that long on this planet, which is very, very cool. Humans, or certainly apes like chimpanzees and humans, are about 6 million years. So 3 to 13 isn't that long. All right, we've got a question from Debbie. She wants to know how big are the groups that they live in?
How big are the groups? So I wouldn't know the exact number because it definitely depends on a bunch of different circumstances. So it depends on the species. These guys are an Atlantic species. Typically, they would definitely live within their monogamous pairs. And a group of seahorses, which is called a herd, fun fact for you guys. It depends on the amount of vegetation that is around. If there's not a lot of mangroves, if there's not a lot of seagrass, then not as many seahorses can hide and they might live in smaller packs. So I've seen them in groups of like 30 to 40 here at the aquarium, very comfortable, but I wouldn't be able to give a solid answer as to how many in the wild.
Yeah, fair enough. Very cool. All right, we've got a question from James. He wants to know how many generations have been at the aquarium of seahorses that you guys have bred?
Oh man, so we've had these, I think, since we have been open at the aquarium, and they generally live between 1 and 4 years for a lined seahorse. And I think just in the time that I've been in the aquarium for about 4 years, we've had at least 4 generations or 5 generations. And I think we've actually given some to other aquariums as well. So I'm not entirely sure how many we've had since we opened, which was in 2013. I'm probably guessing close to 10 different generations.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we'll take a couple more questions here. Mr. Edgeropoulos wants to know, what are some of the predators that seahorses have in the wild?
So larger seahorses are a big one. So if any of those baby juvenile seahorses are hanging out with their parents after they're born, the parents might actually eat them if they don't escape. So that's why, for the most part, parents don't really take care of the young. The young are on their own. And that's also part of the reason why we separate them here at the aquarium, but also just anything larger than them. So any kind of shark, any kind of stingray, any large fish or crustacean that's hanging around any sort of vegetation that they're in, those are all possible predators for seahorses.
Awesome. All right. Before we wrap up, Tally, if you could take us back to the pipefish for just a second. There was in the back of the tank, there was a whole bunch of them that were standing quite upright. It was a very neat view. So if we zoom in on them near the bottom, they're fantastic.
So these are actually not pipefish. These are shrimp fish, or you might know them as razorfish. They look really similar to pipefish because they're upright, but they're not part of the same family of stygnathids. The pipefish are these guys right here. They're basically completely camouflaged, and a lot of guests tend to miss them when they're walking past, but you'll see it's basically just like a straight-bodied seahorse over here.
Yeah, fantastic. And thanks to the ones on the bottom too. That's just quite the image. So, Tally, before we wrap up, how can people go online to learn more about what you guys are doing at the aquarium and more about seahorses generally?
Yeah, so through Ripley's Aquariums, we are actually doing something called Ripley's Aquariums at Home. So if you go to the Ripley's Aquarium website, we have posted a whole bunch of videos, activity sheets, crafts, science experiments that you guys can do from the comfort of your home. Look out for anything that's upcoming. We have a few projects in mind that might be becoming released soon. We're also continuing to do explores with you guys on Thursdays and Fridays, ideally. We're thinking of introducing a whole other series of tanks for you guys to have a look at while you're at home.
Fantastic. Well, yes, you can check back on our YouTube page at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, see sea turtles, stingrays, sharks, and more. Again, we're going to be diving into some more very neat species in the coming weeks to come. Every Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m., pretty much guaranteed, but we'll see how it goes and check in with our YouTube channel to see what's coming up next. For everyone at home, thank you so much. I just linked the Ripley's Aquarium at Home resource into our chat bar, so you can check that out for some more great stuff from the aquarium. And for now, Tally, thank you so much for showing us all your amazing seahorses.
No problem. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
All right. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye for now, guys.